Dear delegates, welcome to the workshop for industrializing countries. The workshop will start shortly at 12 Central European Time. We are very happy to welcome you to the workshop today, taking place during the 84th IEC General Meeting. I'm very pleased to be with all of you today. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Iec Briefing and I have recently taken over as head of the Affiliate Country Program. The workshop will start shortly. In the meantime, please take note of the following important information. This meeting is recorded and will be available to watch on demand on the IEC website. By attending this meeting today, it is understood that you consent to being recorded. The video and presentations will be made available on the IEC website. Registered participants will receive an email from the IEC Affiliate Country Program Secretariat once these are made available. Please use the Q&A function to ask a question to the speakers. I would also like to note that you are unable to rename yourself. This is a function that has been disabled, and I'm very sorry about that. I'm confident that you will enjoy the workshop, and I look forward to the presentations from the speakers. I wish you a fruitful meeting, and I'm very pleased to give the floor to Mr. Dennis Chu, Regional Director of the IEC Asia Pacific Regional Center and facilitator of the workshop, for his welcome remarks. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you, Aristia. Hello, everyone. I'm Dennis Chu from the IEC Asia Pacific Regional Center and located in Singapore. And I'll be your MC for today. To kick off the 2020 workshop for industrializing countries, I would like to invite our Affiliate Country Program Leader, Rajesh Sharma, to give us his welcome remarks. Rajesh, please.
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you can allow me, share the screen with me. Thank you. Good morning once again. It is a pleasure to open the workshop for industrializing countries during the 84th IEC General Meeting. Last year, the workshop for industrializing countries focused for the first time on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, underscoring the importance of this subject. We continue to focus on the United Nations SDGs in this year's workshop, but on different perspectives, which I will elaborate on later. In September 2015, the United Nations published 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, with an aim to enhancing world peace and prosperity, eradicate hunger and poverty, and to protect people and the planet by 2030. It calls for innovation and broad collaboration between public and private society. IEC International Standards and IEC Conformity Assessment, CA, systems contribute to all the 17 goal SDGs. They provide the foundation that allows all countries and industries to adopt or build sustainable technologies and apply best practices. And they form the basis for innovation as well as quality and risk management. During the first part of the workshop, we will have the opportunity to listen to presentations focusing on the overview of SDGs and the IEC, how circular economy contributes to the SDGs, and get a closer look at SDG 7 on access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable modern energy for all. During the second part of the workshop, we will explore further on the affiliate country perspective and the strategic vision of IEC on SDGs. I strongly encourage all delegates to participate actively during the quality question and answer session. Share their experience on how IEC international standards and IEC conformity assessment systems have enabled businesses regulators, and policymakers and consumers to contribute to safety, economy, health, and education. I look forward to the presentation and trust you will have a fruitful workshop. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Dennis.
Hey, thank you, Rajesh. Yes, thank you, Rajesh, for your welcome remarks and setting up the stage on the UN SDGs at the workshop, not only this year, but also last year. Well, our next speaker needs no introduction, as everyone knows him. He is none other than the IEC ambassador for the UN SDG, Mr. Vimal Mahindra. Let us now welcome Vimal to give us an overview of the actions taken by IEC to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Vimal, please.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I guess you can see my screen now.
Yes, can see clearly. But yeah.
Wonderful.
If you can use the full screen mode, please. Yeah.
This is in full screen mode.
Okay, you maybe switch to the system, the setting at the top. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
It's perfect now. Oh, it was okay just now. Okay.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you. Thank you, Rajesh, for setting the platform, and Dennis for the introduction. It is once again a privilege to come here and speak at the this Industrializing Countries workshop. For me, it's a privilege also because over the last 5 years, every year I have been coming and having the privilege of speaking to you in one capacity or the other. Started with DC, which was again electricity access, and now it is for SDGs. Let me begin by sharing the screen, which I think you must all be familiar with. This is the slide which shows the 17 SDGs. I guess by now you are familiar. 196 countries, heads of state, signed on a pledge in 2015 in Paris, what was known as the Paris Accord, to promise all citizens in their countries these 17 fundamental rights. And in 2015, when they signed on, they put a deadline that they would achieve all of these 17 latest by 2030, which means they had a 15-year plan to do this. 5 years have already passed. So now we are in 2020 to 2030, so 10 years. And that's the reason why IEC is quite excited about it. All of these 17 SDGs are directly impacted by the work of IEC, that means electricity and electrotechnology. And given that we are left with only 10 years, that's why I call it Decade of Action. Decade of Action because the first 5 years was more about information sharing and getting people together and getting countries to set up their own programs, etc., and make their own plans. And now it is about operationalizing this work. And as they operationalize, the idea of today's session was also to share with you what IEC is doing to contribute to this effort. So one of the first things that we did in IEC was last year in February 2019, the SMB formed the Ad Hoc Group 84. The Ad Hoc Group 84 was mainly set up by the IEC SMB to evaluate what can we do in electrotechnology which will aid different governments, regulators, policymakers, industry, and the society to fulfill the expectations laid under these 17 SDGs. And this work was very important, and it culminated earlier this year. And in a later presentation, Ralph, the chair of the SMB, will share of the future of what we are going to do about it. But let me come to the point which Rajesh also mentioned, SDG 7, which is at the core of lot of the SDGs. The SDG 7 is about ensuring affordable, reliable, and sustainable modern energy for all. So it's not just electricity, it's about modern, it's about sustainable. That means it is just not simple fossil fuels or increasing the carbon footprint. It has to be affordable, that it cannot become too expensive for the consumers who need it. It is reliable. That means that when you flick the switch, there is actually electricity and electric current flowing through it. And it is not that you have the infrastructure, but there is no electricity. So with all this, there were several targets and indicators. And let me explain a little more in detail about the SDG 7, where we have the targets and the indicators in this table. For each of the SDGs, there are several targets to be achieved. For example, SDG 7 has 7.1, by 2030 ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy. And how this is going to be measured is in 7.1.1 and 7.1.2, which is about proportion of population with access to electricity, and where the primary fuel, that means the main fuel used, is actually clean fuel and clean fuel technologies. So the emphasis is very clear. It's about clean fuels, which is more toward renewable resources. Now, here's an interesting thing. When we analyzed the text of these targets and indicators, there are some terms highlighted on your screen now. Energy services, renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean energy, cleaner fossil fuel, energy services, clean energy, energy intensity. All these terms are typical terms which are found in the IEC electrotechnology community. Given that these terms are found there, it is no wonder that IEC has to step in and bring standards which will enable all this. And that's the reason why IEC has to do a lot of work and also to promote this kind of work that IEC is doing. So one of the first things which has already been implemented, those of you who may be involved with some of the technical work already must be familiar with this kind of a box. This is in a way conveying to the older IEC community which is involved in standards development or standards maintenance to start connecting their work to one or the other SDGs. The basic assumption is that either the work of any of the technical committees supports one of the SDGs, and if it does not, what are we doing with it? Why are we wanting to do something which does not promote one of the SDGs? Because there is a priority and there is a deadline by which we need to finish this work. All the work of Ad Hoc 84 that I explained has been put into this new IEC briefing paper, which is now published. It's available for download and the link is also provided here. It gives the kind of roadmap that IEC has set for itself, relates to standards development, and how we will proliferate this work across IEC community. I will encourage those who have not yet read this work to please download this and review it, and also possibly share it with your colleagues. Let me also share how IEC actually makes a difference and what meaningful electrotechnical work is happening across the world. This is a picture from India, where I come from, in the city of Bangalore. This lady has this push cart where she is roasting corn on this bed of coals. Without the solar PV and the small fan, she would have a handheld fan with which she would do this. And it was tiring, exhausting. She could do only one cob at a time. And it was exhausting work. The lady is about 75 years of age. Last year, one local NGO, a social organization, got her this small solar PV panel with a small charge controller and battery, a small fan, and if you can make out a small LED light on this. So now what happens is this gets charged throughout the day, and the fan blows air onto the coals and the corn gets roasted. So she has more time to engage with the customers. She does not tire so easily, and her output has gone up. Her well-being has improved. Her income has improved. She can, because of the conversation she's able to engage in, she has more customers. This is where IEC technologies add value. The solar PV panels, the battery, the charge controller, fan, LED lights, they all have IEC standards. Now we are beginning to see all of this coming together to serve humanity. If you can think about the number of such push carts across the world, I'm sure in many of your countries, I know in India, there are millions of such push carts which are across the country. Imagine the power of getting this kind of simple solution to all of them. The cost of this whole thing is about $150 US, but the value is immense. And I think this is where IEC makes a difference. Now, this is my concluding slide, and I want to leave with you this message in the beginning itself. One, demand more from the standardization community. In each of your countries, you know best what you need to deliver on the SDGs. IEC is the best platform in the world where we have the technology experts who can standardize, but they need to know what needs to be standardized. How can they serve you best? And the only way they will know is if you share with them the uniqueness of your country, your challenges, your opportunities, the topology, temperatures, humidity, use conditions in which you operate. Once they know of this, then they can make a difference. So I encourage you to join IEC work groups and engage over there. On a personal level, save energy, because saving energy is directly saving the environment. Most of all, get engaged. SDGs demand from all of us. And this picture on the right that I shared, it's about the coming generations. We all inherited a good earth. We grew up in a place which was very clean, with clean air. And even though there was not abundance of electricity in India when I grew, but today there is abundance. How can I leave abundance for the coming generations and also leave a sustainable world with clean air? I think that's where we can contribute. And that's why I say my main message is get engaged. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Vimal, for the concise yet very informative overview. I think it was a very inspiring message on how IEC can make the difference on serving humanity. Thank you, Vimal. All right, next, our focus is in this session is on the circular economy and how it contributes to the UN SDGs. In this session, our first speaker is Solange Blaskowski, who is the chair of the IEC Advisory Committee on Environmental Aspects. Solange will share with us an overview of the circular economy, its relevance to the SDGs, and in particular, with IEC work in this area. Solange, please.
Thank you, Dennis. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's really an honor to be invited for this meeting to present about circular economy and the link with SDGs. My name is Solange Blaskowski, talking to you from Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and I work for Philips, a health and well-being electronics company. I have many roles and activities in standardization at national, European, and international level, and in IEC, I am the chair of ACEA, And I'm also the convener of Working Group 5, developing a standard to assess the proportion of reused components in products. Before I enter in the topic of today, please allow me to say a few words about Iec. Iec is the Advisory Committee on Environmental Aspects, and we advise the SMB to support IEC committees on matters associated with the standardization related to environmental aspects. We also support resolving environment-related matters across IEC committees or even across SDOs, for example, by initiating contacts for a joint ISO-IEC activity. Iec does not write standards, no. Instead, we write guides that are to be used by the standard writers when embedding your environmental aspects in your standards. Since recently, we also received the role of conferring the horizontal function in the area of environment to committees when they are writing horizontal publications. Iec is very active in communicating topics and concepts of relevance to IEC, like the one on circular economy. So this year we had 2 Academy webinars, and one of them was covering circular economy. And together with the communications team of IEC, we prepared a number of articles covering a variety of topics, but in particular, a number of them related to circular economy. A selected list, including the links, is given in this slide, and I'm sure Dennis will make these slides available to you later on in the process, so you can reach out to these links. So today, globally, we are facing many challenges. The population is increasing dramatically and will continue doing so for the next decades. Today, we are 7.8 billion people, and the forecast is that we will be reaching the 10 billion by 2050. Although still exist huge inequalities amongst the regions, with many still very, very poor, in average, the economic power of the global population is increasing. This is, of course, fantastic, but it also presents some drawbacks. As the ability of people to steadily own more assets increases, it also leads to overconsumption and even to some consumerism. The expectation is that if we don't take action, by 2050, we will be consuming the equivalent of 3 planets Earth. Just to give you an idea, the demand of neodymium used in hard disk drives is expected to increase by 700% by 2050, while the demand of dysprosium, for example, that's used in magnets of windmills, that will increase by 2,600%. This overconsumption is resulting in a tremendous growth of waste production. In 2019 alone, the amount of electronic waste generated was over 53 tons. The intensive extraction of materials from the ground to produce all the products we need is also leading to a lot of depletion of our planet. Today, more than 75% of the surface of the Earth show signs of depletion. The circular economy will help us making the transition to more sustainable and green economies while retaining the value of products, parts, and materials in the economy. So, circular economy is one of the answers to our future. The core principles of the circular economy are of the eliminating waste and pollution through intelligent designs, keeping products and materials in use as long as possible by making their flow more circular, and regenerating our natural resources. Circular economy is a very powerful instrument to achieve the sustainable development that the SDGs are asking for. It does this through the concept of decoupling. It proposes the decoupling of resource use and environmental impacts from the economic growth. In other words, it calls for maintaining the economic growth, let's go ahead, but using less resources, using less fossil fuels, using less metals, using less construction materials, and so on. Using resources wisely, use them more than once to reduce the environmental impacts. The SDGs have the objective to lead to sustainable development globally. And we've seen this with the speeches of the two speeches before. For it to be achieved, this is crucial to harmonize three core elements: the economic growth, the social inclusion, and the environmental protection. Looking deeper into the targets and indicators of each of these goals, we see that 12 of them are linked directly or indirectly to the management of natural resources. But in particular, goal number 12, responsible consumption and production, is at the core of the circular economy. In order to achieve economic growth and sustainable development at the same time, we must change the way we produce goods, but also the way we consume our natural resources. Industries and business must be encouraged to design high-quality products that consume less resources, that can operate longer, that are fit to be reused, to be repaired, to be upgraded or refurbished, to say a few, but also be easily recycled. Consumers, on the other hand, must be encouraged to use products longer, be willing to let them be repaired, or even consider a refurbished or remanufactured option over buying a new product, for example. Resource efficiency is at the core of circular economy, and this is well reflected in SDGs 7 and 12. For many years, the focus of IEC community has been and continues to be to improve the energy consumption of electronic products, the energy efficiency. Lately, the development of clean and renewable forms of energies increased in importance in IEC. Both are very important to decrease the consumption of coal, of natural gas, and fossil oil, which are today the main energy sources. With increased demand on the use of materials and the imminent scarcity of natural resources, the focus of IEC community must also be extended to the materials used and their preservation, to the material efficiency. So circular economy has also strong links to SDGs 6, 8, and 15. And if you want to know a little bit more about this, I refer to an Iec article on the management of resources to support the SDGs. This slide shows strategies to improve the material efficiency mentioned in the previous slide. By following the use and waste hierarchy, choices can be made on strategies that promote or that should be avoided when designing, using, and discarding electronic products. Highest in this diagram are strategies associated with longer product life while using less resources. So design products that use less materials and are able to live much longer than they do today. Next in the hierarchy takes the extension of the life of the products and the parts as the strategy. So reuse and repair are preferred over refurbishing. And this is because the lower you go in the hierarchy, the more value is lost, or in other words, the more resources will be needed to accomplish it. For example, repair involves bringing a product back to its working condition by, for instance, replacing a non-working part by a new one. Refurbishing, on the other hand, is likely to also involve a repair, but also will involve a cleaning, bringing aesthetics to the initial condition, doing a new sales, delivery, installation. So this means that refurbishing requires extra resources for its execution. So let's now go down into the waste phase. So for many people, circular economy equals recycling. But as you see in the graph, recycling is very close to the red zone. And this is because of the significant losses in value of the product when it reaches that point. Although it's important that products and parts can be and are recycled, this should be the last resort. So this is why we say recycling is the worst of the good and should be applied only when all the other strategies are no longer possible. If after their use, products are, for example, incinerated or discarded into landfill, there is a significant loss of value associated to that product. As such, we can attribute very, very low efficiency in the use of that product. So in a circular economy, such strategies should really be avoided. And this is my last slide to you today. It shows a list of horizontal and product publications from different technical committees in IEC that are related or are important for the material efficiency. I will not go into the details, but please feel free to reach out to me or to IEC if you have more questions. And once more, I want to thank you, the organizers, for inviting me to this workshop, and the audience for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Solange, for shedding light on the circular economy as a powerful tool to achieve sustainable development. As mentioned by you as well, all presentation slides and a recording of this event will be shared online after the event. All right. And now next, as we look, we would like to invite Miyuki Takanake to share with us from a different perspective on the circular economy. As Solange mentioned, the ACEA do not do standards, but they do guides for the technical committee. And now we are very pleased to have the Vice Chair of TC11 to share with us from the TC perspective on the circular economy. Tanaka-san, please.
Great. Thank you, Denis-san. Can you see my slide?
Yes, I can see
okay.
it well and hear you very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Denis-san, for kind introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Miyuki Takenaka, TC111 Vice Chair. Thank you very much for inviting me for this wonderful workshop today. It is my pleasure to introduce TC111 activity. Let me start my presentation. This slide shows TC111 history. TC111 created in 2004, and we have 18 plenary meetings so far. Every year, many experts joining the plenary meetings, and we discussed deeply regarding the environmental issues. Okay, sorry. This is scope of IEC TC111. Our scope is standardization of environmental aspects, prepare a guideline or horizontal standards. Important mission of TC111 is horizontal function. Therefore, cooperating with IEC product committee is very important to ensure consistency in IEC standard. And also, we are monitoring regional standardization and reactivity to become focal point for discussion in that area. And this is TC111 today. Currently, 26 P members and 9 observers are joining. And experts are more than 200 people from 22 countries, and around 400 experts are participating in workings. We have many liaisons in internal IEC, such as 20, and also we have liaison with ISO. ISO TC 207 is environmental management, and ISO 323 is circular economy. We have already have liaison with these ISO TCs. And we publicated 27 standards, and we have 12 active groups and chairman advisory group. Let me introduce environmental issues in E&E product. Environmental issues become more and more important globally, such as chemical substance management or circular economy, mentions transition, including waste management. Also, environmental conscious design, ECD, or life cycle assessment, GHG emission is important. And recently, material efficiency become more important topic. TC111 will monitor these environmental issues and standardization area. This slide shows a relation between SDGs and TC111 environmental standards. Maybe you know there are many papers published by IEC Central Office. And TC11 standard also introduced mentioning relevant to achieving many SDG goals. So I'd like to introduce some of TC11 standard more in detail. This is IEC 62474, material declaration for product and for the electrotechnical industry. It defines the requirement for reporting the substances and materials used in E&E products. We also developed a database updated on a regular basis. Please feel access to this URL. And now this standard is balloting for a joint collaboration with ISO TC 207 to develop a material declaration standard. Next one is eco-design, IEC 62430, environmentally conscious design for electric and electronic products. Now, edition 2 of this standard published by joint working ECD with ISO TC 207 last year, and you can see the logo marking on the top page. And we also plan for the development of a new standard that includes circularity aspect on environmental conscious design. Next is also chemical substance area, IEC 6321 series. This is the determination of certain substances in electrotechnical products. This standard developed a screening and verification test method of certain substances, such as laws or REACH regulation by international interlaboratory studies. And also, we are developing new part of joint working with ISO TC61 plastics, because plastics are so many environmental regulations. It is necessary to collaborate with ISO. And in circular economy area, guidance on material efficiency consideration, environmental cost design of E&E product. This TR supports eco-design. and focus on optimal and efficient use of material within product. It ensures sustainability of natural resources. It is very important area. And next is GHG emission area. Analysis of quantification methodology of greenhouse gas emission for E&E products and systems. This TR based on result of comparative study on existing methodologies and provides guidance to understand these methodologies and evaluate carbon footprint of products. It is applicable to any types of E&E product. And this slide shows next work. It means our future vision. We believe TC111 mission is contributing to circular economy aligned with SDGs. So now, material circularity consideration or reused components started to standardization. Also, a new work proposal such as product category rules or carbon footprint calculation are now under circulation. And also, US is very important topic. TC111 are now preparing for under development standardization. And let me introduce TC111 information. You can see the left side. This is our public and promotional website. Maybe you can read many presentations or recent activity. And the right side is IEC official URL. We are collaborating using collaborating tool and this official dashboard. And this slide is TC111 official. Chair is Mr. Christophe from France, and secretary is Marco, and the vice secretary is Andrea from Italy. If you are interested in TC111 activities, please feel to contact us. And this is my final slide. IEC TC111 as a one-stop shop for environmental standards that helps you keep your product and system clean. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you, Denis-san.
Thank you very much, Miyuki-san, for sharing on the various projects by TC111. I think this is something that we would like to encourage more countries to continue to join this TC111 and be involved in its projects. Now, this wraps up the session on the circular economy. Next, we'll focus on a different perspective. We'll look at the SDG 7, which is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And to start this session, I'm pleased to have with us Rajesh Sharma, who's the convener of the IEC System Committee for Low Voltage DC. Rajesh will share with us on IEC standardization on LVDC for electricity access. Rajesh, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dennis.
Yes, Rajesh, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah. So my name is Rajesh Sharma, and I work in the Bureau of Indian Standards, which is the national standards body of India. And it is my pleasure to be a part of the IEC workshop for industrializing countries today. In my presentation, I will be sharing with you my experience in the IEC standardization on LVDC for electricity access. Well, this is a grim reality. More than 1 billion people today still lack electricity in their houses. In the words of the United Nations Secretary General, energy is the golden thread that connects economic growth, increased social equity, and an environment that allows the world to thrive. Energy is opportunity. It transforms lives, economies, and our planet. Well, this slide has been shown a number of times past. These are the Sustainable Development Goals. IEC is working predominantly in all these areas. Of course, the most important topic for today's my presentation is the SDG number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. The task really is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy for all by the year 2030. This is a reality check. This slide shows the magnitude of the problem in several industrializing countries with respect to the people lacking access to electricity. In contrast, this slide shows the countries having very high consumption of electricity per year in a household. It is striking that these countries are also economically developed countries. It is therefore established that electricity is essential for economic development of a country. For a nation to prosper, it must provide access to affordable and clean energy to all the citizens. So what is energy access? This is one of the most comprehensive definitions of energy access. Access to energy is the ability to avail energy that is adequate, available when needed, reliable, of good quality, affordable, legal, convenient, healthy, and safe for all the required energy services across the household, productive, and community uses. This is what is electricity access, this is what is energy access, and this is what is being aimed by the year 2030. Well, energy access is not something subjective, which different people can give different interpretations. It has to be measurable based on an objective criteria. The Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, or the SMAP group of the World Bank, has published the most comprehensive criteria for measuring the electricity access and energy access depending upon the availability of energy in the household. If you can see from here that there are different tiers, and improving the attributes of energy supply leads to the higher tiers of energy access. We will come to this details a little later. So what are the attributes of energy supply? The attributes which are related to energy supply are capacity, duration, availability, reliability, quality, affordability, legality, convenience, health, and safety. So if we couple the previous slide and this slide, we have a table something like this, which on the horizontal level gives the attributes, and on the columns it shows various attributes and how these attributes lead to higher tiers of electrical supply. This slide gives the objective criteria for quantification of various attributes related to the energy access. And this slide, this is a picture from our friend Hans Christoph, and this really sums up why standardization is very important, why there is a need for standardization. You can see that there is a multiplicity of solutions available in the market, but these are not standardized. These are not interchangeable and not validated for safety, performance, and reliability. We therefore need an international standard which can address the attributes associated with energy access. Attributes which I told in the previous slide, these are the attributes and corresponding to the different tiers. This is the structure of the work at the Systems Committee LVDC. There are 3 working groups within the Systems Committee LVDC, and the work group 1, if you can see on the top of the table, is on LVDC publications for electricity access. This is the work which we are doing in this working group. And this is the standard which is under development at the present. The project number entitled to this project is 63318 edition 1. This is the project number, and the document which has been drafted in this working group is the Systems Committee LVDC stroke 86/CD, which is, as the name suggests, it is at the CD stage. The title of the document is Electricity Access Requirements with SELV DC for Tier 2 and Tier 3 of the SMAP multi-tier framework for household electricity supply. And this Tier 2 and Tier 3, if you remember, are from the same table of the SMAP, which we saw about a few slides back. And they are again mentioned in the table given in this slide. This draft standard specifies electrical systems that are meant to satisfy the attributes associated with electrical supply for energy access outlined in Tier 2 and Tier 3 of the SMAP multi-tier framework. So this is the target of the standard. This is the objective of the standard, that we have to provide an enabling provision for the electricity access in accordance with Tier 2 and Tier 3 of the SMAP multi-tier framework. So when we talk of limits, when we talk of quantification of power limits and energy limits per day, so Tier 2, when we talk of Tier 2 electricity access, it basically means that we are aiming at power between 50 to 200 watts. And for Tier 3, we aim at power of 200 to 800 watts. And the energy limits per day for Tier 2 is from 200 watts to 1 kilowatt hours. And for Tier 3, it is from 1 kilowatt hour to 3.2 kilowatt hours. The important thing to note here is that the maximum limits in Tier 3 can deliver electricity on par with the grid if energy efficiency that is inherent to DC supply is brought into picture. So when we aim at Tier 3, it is actually at par with whatever a normal household will aim to get from the grid. So what is the construction? What is the solution? What we are proposing in the standard? What is the architecture? The architecture or the design is a system that has distributed energy sources using a photovoltaic panel and battery for storage. The power consumption subsystem, conversion subsystem, is designed such that voltage levels at each of the interfaces to it, the photovoltaic panel, the storage, the delivery interfaces, are operated with the correct voltages. And this gives an example of how the schematic diagram of the wiring will look like. This is the example of the architecture for the circuit of DC system that can address the requirements for Tier 3 of the multi-tier framework. Well, if we can go into some specific details of the standard, as I told you, is applicable to electrical systems that are meant to satisfy the attributes associated with electrical supply for Tier 2 and Tier 3 of the multi-tier framework. Apart from the normal usual clauses, the normative clauses and the definitions, the status and the objective of the standard is the content is dedicated to Tier 2 and Tier 3 of the use cases of the multi-tier framework. The architecture, as I just explained to you, is the schematic diagram of how the various components of the system are connected to achieve this target. The typical use cases is a kit solution for a house and a shared installation. All these three are addressed for this. And for Tier 2, the maximum DC voltage at any point in the electrical circuit is 35 volts for standalone renewable energy systems. And for Tier 3, the recommended nominal DC supply voltage used for the system is 48 volts plus minus 20%. And photovoltaic panels, they are addressed here. The capacity is the recommended capacity of the photovoltaic panels has been explained in details in the standard. And so the battery, all these considerations, the safety consideration, how the compartment has to be constructed, what are the safety considerations, they have all been elaborately mentioned in the standard. The load converter, the electrical devices which are required for providing the solution, and the wiring, the supply shall be of two conductor system. The color of the insulation shall be in accordance with IEC 60445, and the connectors and the sockets, the fixed installations, the loads, fixed and the mobile loads, all are addressed in the standard. And the standard provides basically all the safety and the performance characteristics associated with providing a suitable solution for tier 2 as well as for tier 3 of the multi-tier framework defined by the IEC, World Bank. And we had a long journey to develop the standard. We crossed different stages, right? We started the work somewhere in December 2019, and with different milestones, we are now at a point where the committee draft was circulated on July, and the comments on the document have been received. The comments have all been compiled, and we are holding a meeting next month, early next month, to resolve all the comments, and subsequently the document will graduate to the CDV stage, and then not very far away from now, we are going to have an international standard. And I thank all the IEC community, including our chairman, Dr. Ralph Sporer, to be so supportive to this work. This standard, I'm telling you, is going to be a game changer, and it will provide energy access to millions of households who do not have access to electricity. This will be the backbone this will be the technical backbone on which the solution is going to be addressed. Consider this picture of a school in a remote location where the grid will never reach. The only way the electricity is ever going to reach this place is if we are going to have a solution, something like we have proposed in the standard. This is the school which is going to get benefited in a remote location. Consider also that there are going to be houses in that village, or there are different locations who will all get benefited by using standardized solutions complying with the requirements of international standard, not only in India, but majority in most of the industrializing countries where the problem of resources and remote areas where the grid connectivity is a big challenge. They are all going to get benefited by using the solution through a photovoltaic panel and providing solution which is reliable, which is safe, and addresses the requirements of these communities living there. Thank you so much. My email address and my phone number are available on this slide. If anybody requires the document to be studied in detail, I can provide this on request. But shortly, the document is also going to be available in the CDV stage through IEC for your comments. Thank you so much, and I thank you again for this patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for your presentation, particularly on the overview of the System Committee on LVDC, and also this game-changing standard that are now going to move to the CDV stage. Next, we'll like to focus on the work of TC82, and in particular on how the work of the Joint Working Group 1 supports developing countries. Our speaker at this session is Leon Roche, who is the co-convener of GW1. Leon, please.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen, and I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Good day to everybody that's on the call, and my topic will be, thanks for the opportunity to talk on TC82 role and associated with SDG 7. The background is that TC82 has been instrumental in IEC for producing standards for photovoltaic renewable energy products and renewable energy renewable energy systems. Originally, PV photovoltaic systems was seen as a non-economical solution for electricity access, but has evolved to where presently it is the norm for on-grid or off-grid electricity supply options and aligns with the SDG 7 goals. PV technology has contributed vastly to the change in the conventional way the present electrical network is constituted, which has transformed customers to prosumers. And TC82 was, when it functioned originally, nobody really worried in the rest of IC about TC82. It used to have produced standards and it was operating. Now there's a lot of activity taking place because renewables is definitely a technology that's got a place to play in the electricity industry. If you're looking at the PV systems, TC82, solar PV energy systems, structure, it's got 8 working groups and 1 joint working group. The working groups in the red is the ones that is system focused, where the other working groups are more product focused. So if we align with SG7, working group 3 has got some association with it, but it's mostly for large systems, and it's also focuses on utility connected PV systems. JWG1 is more focusing on off-grid systems and is more associated. And the 62257 series, which is very familiar with everybody, is basically the core of this working group, joint working group, and we'll discuss this further. The history of where the 62257 was originated from, it was a past document that IIC produced. And this document was released in 1999 and intended to support a bulk procurement proposal and was the foundation of the 62257 series, which is now the core of TC82's business. In 2005, the IIC TC 62257 series was reviewed to focus on needs for project developers and installers, as we add a different focus point. And lately, we are now in a stage where the series addresses specifically needs aligned with SG7 and also with SMAP, as highlighted by Rajiv. SMAP is a
sorry, Leon.
Important. Yes,
sorry, may I interrupt you?
Yes.
It seems that not the full slide can be seen. Somehow it's only showing 3/4 of it.
Go away from the full slide.
Yeah, it's only showing 3/4. Are you using PowerPoint or PDF?
Yes. No, I'm using PowerPoint. You still don't see the full slide?
Okay, now can you switch to the present? Can you go to display setting? Display setting, yes. Click on it and switch. Okay, swap. Yes.
Still not you don't see the full slide?
Yeah, I think
No, this is not the full slide.
Yeah, it's somehow.
It's half of it.
Yeah, somehow.
Oh God, sorry, people about this.
Or would you like us to flash from outside?
Yeah, perhaps it's going to be easier.
So yeah. So
let me stop.
I think that's better if Dennis, the central office, can show slides.
All right. Well, we move down to the slide. Okay.
Move the slide.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry about that. Can go to the end of slide 4. Let me just continue on there. So the SG7, no, one back. Let's go one back. There we go up to slide 4. Sorry about this. Can you go back to slide 4? Thank you. You just say there. So, what are the last bullet on the slide? We have in JWG1, the series has focused very much on the SMAP and also on SG7. And within the SMAP, we've aligned the various standards that we have with the tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, and 3, as previously mentioned. And in the future, we will start looking at tier 4 and tier 5 to produce standards which are aligned with that. So we have already produced solar lantern standards, we produce PV kit standards, and we are busy producing standards for small installations, PV on rooftops, to align with T3. And thanks to the World Bank, which is supporting us in this initiative, we are now able to produce standards which also has got conformance and quality control built into it. Go on, next slide. So in 2019, we started to, in updating the TC 62257 series, to concentrate on the structure with groupings that is more user-friendly and support the present needs for related standards and also align with SG7. So what we've gone from the present structure to this new structure where we've grouped the different contents and the documents into the first grouping is the introduction to the series, needs assessment, project management, tendering, and general information. Then the next group was on specific technical guidelines, installations, and design. The next group was on storage and balance of systems and components. The next grouping was on products and package kits. Then we've got a grouping on inspection, testing guidelines for products, systems. And then the last grouping is on technical guidelines for skills and off-grid appliances. The next slide. So we've unpacked, visually, we've unpacked the series as follows. To the left, you'll see a column where we said the what, the how, and the by who. And within the what, the blue line, the first row, we've identified various subcategories that will align, so like project management, and also different documents, tendering, for example. Then in the next one on the how, we got system designs, we've got power energy calculations, data management, and designs for off-grid systems. If you go to the how for installations, the framework for installation of systems, planning installations of PV systems less than 100 volt DC, planning for installations of solar systems for public facilities, installation of off-grid systems. And then the who is the skills and the system installation tools, testing and competency training for designers and installers. And for the products, we got generators, balance of components, technical specifications, product inspection, and off-grid appliances. And off-grid appliances mostly is focused on DC equipment. Next slide, please. What's the way forward? So I'm saying in the first bullet, IC T32 JWG is continuously striving to produce standards that support the affiliated program, industrializing countries, and have thus started to align the structure with recent needs to make the 62257 series more user-friendly and SD7 compatible. We also, in close cooperation with other TCs, and LBDC system is one of them, as our core TC technical solutions is DC-based. And this is a challenge for the conventional norm, as many TCs in the IEC is much AC-based and not DC-based. So we also plan to compile parts of the series so that one document needs to be obtained for a specific task, for example, an installation document, So you don't have to buy a lot of documents if you want to do an installation on a PV on rooftops. So what we want to highlight, the second last bullet there, we would like to test this proposed new 62257 series structure changes. And also we're changing the numbering system to a 3-digit numbering system with the industrializing countries to ascertain if it is supported by potential users and that we're on the right track. So we thus invite comments on this proposed changing of the structure of the series, and we really appreciate if we can get, because we want to aim this series at it doesn't end up in a drawer and it looks a nice document. It must be a document that is required by the user and it supports electricity access. And we are very much focused on that achievement. Next slide. So we've got a second proposal. So some standards in this series is aimed to give electricity access a kickstart and support various initiatives that individuals, small entrepreneurs have. The second bullet, JWG1 is thus proposing that the initiative we pioneer to issue standards for free to affiliated member NECs be taken to a next step where free standards are issued to those individuals, small entrepreneurs, to promote the use of standards. This investment will have a return in the future for IEC NECs when these entrepreneurs need other standards as they themselves develop to be more compliant, to do more compliant electricity access work. So we need suggestions to pursue this proposal. It's under IEC's business to sell standards and not give away standards for free, but this is a step in that direction, and it's to support developing industries with renewables. The last slide. So that's my two questions I'm putting on the table. The one is support for the structure or proposals, how we structure the series, and the second one is the initiative that we can issue documents to support the use of standards and quality installations. How can we go about that? Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. Sorry about the disruption.
No worries. Thank you very much, Leon, for the presentation and your two proposals. Maybe we can answer them during the Q&A session that will follow very soon. All right. We have really done. I'd like to thank all the speakers for speaking within the time. And so we are now 13 minutes past 1, and we have got about 20 minutes for the Q&A. I'd like to now invite all the speakers to come and join the panel discussion. Please turn on your video and yeah. Okay, good. Please, I would like to invite all speakers. So Leon, you can turn on. Rajiv, Miyuki-san, Solange.
It seems I'm not able to turn on my video because somehow the host stopped it.
Oh.
Okay, there it goes. Thank you.
Right. And Rajiv and Miyuki-san.
Yes,
Same
me
with
too.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay.
Can't open. Just a moment. Yes, thank you.
Yes, will be enabled shortly. Same for Rajiv as well.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have the panel here, and I saw that Solange has answered quite a few questions already online. so I think you know that now we are between the tea break, right, and the Q&A session.
Work done, right? Let's go home. Oh, no, we are home.
Exactly. I think almost everyone here is home. All right. So, well, I'm looking through the questions now. Maybe we start off with one on the circular economy. This question from Baba Yoko mentioned about ISO TC 323 working on circular economy, and he or she wants to know whether do we at the IEC also take into account or work closely with ISO TC 323. So maybe both Solange and Miyuki-san would like to answer this.
So perhaps Miyuki-san, do you want to answer it?
Miyuki-san first.
Okay, so now TC111 has already make a liaison with ISO TC323. So we collaborate closely in the future. It is an important partner, I think. And Solange-san is also the member of TC323. So how about Solange-san? Do you have any?
Yes, yeah. Thanks. Well, in general, at least at TC 111, and I cannot talk about the other TCs because I don't know how it goes there, but at TC 111, every time we start a new standard, we are going to look what is there out there. And TC 323 is really developing a number of important standards in the circular economy. So it starts with the basics, which is the principles, what are the definitions, what is circular economy? There is no clear definition yet. Everybody has a different opinion on it. And TC 323 is developing all that. And there is one standard that's going to be very important for IEC, and it's about circularity measurement. And that will impact us all, certainly in IEC, because the way we assess our products is with their method, we would be able to say whether our products are sufficiently circular or not. And we see in Europe, at least, a lot of legislation already coming up related to circularity assessment. They focus more on the material efficiency. So is a product repairable? What's the amount of recycled content that a product has? And they are now posing limits, minimum limits for example, the amount of recycled content in products. So yes, I'm making this story too long maybe, but yes, we do look into these standards on a broad way, and they are all impacting all types of products, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Solange and Miyuki-san. I think you answered the question very well. I've got some questions. I think they relate to the 62257 or series of standards. So maybe Leon, you can take a step at this. Let me see if it's a question. Oh, it's about, okay, maybe it's relating to the two questions that you raised at the end of your presentation, the two proposals. Maybe can I ask you on one of them first, which is regarding the feedback that you want to receive on the use of the new, regarding the new structure of the 62257 series of standards. In this sense, how would you like, or how can people give feedback to you with regard to this question, this proposal?
Well, my email is in the last slide of the presentation, so they can mail me. But they are welcome to work via the IEC regional representatives. I think it will also be good to involve the IEC. I just realized yesterday when we had a session, perhaps we need to also liaise more with the IEC regional representatives on this topic, and obtain also a consolidated view. Sometimes some of the views or the requirements is geographically differently in different geographical areas, and it will be good if it can be sort of consolidated. But everyone is welcome to contact me directly. That's not a problem. And we always invite people to join. Many affiliated countries have identified TC82 as one of the TCs they will follow. So they're also welcome to join our meetings. We are, at the moment, it's a problem in our travel and availability, but now with that we can start using Zoom and things like that, more people can participate. And this is the advantage about Zoom. It's given people that can normally not attend meetings, it gives them opportunities, and we really invite people to attend and participate as observers or give comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Dennis, may I make a quick comment?
Yes.
So additionally, I think given that electricity access itself is so important and is so impactful. Within the IEC, one special concession has been made for all the affiliate countries, which is affiliate and associate countries, that they can, beside the number of TCs they can participate in, for System Committee LVDC Work Group 1, which Rajiv had presented earlier, additionally they can participate. This is over and above the normal number of TCs that they participate in. So I think that will be definitely helpful in understanding the use case in different countries. So the point that I was making earlier about participation. So all you need to do is, I think you write a message to Aristia, and she can direct to Work Group 1 and to the System Committee LVDC. Thank you.
Yes, for the System Committee on LVDC, there's a special concession, so-called, that this will not count to the maximum of 10 committees where the affiliate can provide comments. All right, so affiliate countries, depending whether you're affiliate or affiliate plus, you can comment up to 5 or 10 TCs and SCs. All right, but once again, thanks, Leon, for sharing with us on how feedback can be given to you, even directly to you as well. That's very good. And second question you had was on the availability of the standards for free. So I'm pleased to share that for this series of standards, we do have a special arrangement where there's a special discount and price for these standards. It's available on the IEC web store, and we'll be happy to share the information later in a written form. All right. So thanks for that. And now we have some questions.
Sorry, Dennis, can I just take it? I think yes. My proposal was one step further than that, because the free standards are available to the NECs or the national committees. They cannot resell them. So my proposal is that there are some, let's say, installation document, that we should consider that installation document being issued free to entrepreneur that is busy doing a job. It cannot resell it, but it's to promote the use of standards, so that some other way we find a way of taking it one step further than just the national committees to produce some of the standards, so that we can make sure people do quality installations and they are conforming to standards when they do that installation, and they understand the purpose of standards, and this will help to promote standards, and hopefully in the future it will become a bigger, it will become a bigger need for them when they do other work to use standards. So that's my my proposal. I know it's against the traditional IEC's modus of operandi, because they sell standards, but just something I'm putting on the table. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. And maybe just to add that affiliates or even members who adopt standards, they can sell it as a national standard and the price of a national standard. All right, maybe we need to move on to the next question. We have a question for Solange, which is with regard to refurbished products. Question from Rafael. He asked if we have to take into account the change in technology. He mentioned that a 10-year-old air conditioner will probably not meet the energy efficiency requirements, and he asked, what's your reaction to this?
It's actually a beautiful question. I think that's the power of refurbishing and remanufacturing. So if you would build your products to be modular, in the next generations, you could still reuse 80% of it, replaced by the essential parts that are important for the energy efficiency, for example, and still we are maintaining all that material in use. Of course, the parts that you're throwing away because they don't fulfill the requirements anymore, then they need to be recycled, for example. So yes, I think that's exactly the idea of the circular economy. Right to the point.
Very good, thank you. And we have got a question on WEE, which I think this is the waste of electrical electronic equipment. And a question for Mario from Philippines is whether IEC have done any work to support WEE. Maybe Solange or Miyuki-san, would you like to answer this question?
Miyuki-san, do you want to do that?
Pardon,
I think it was in your presentation.
Conformity assessment or
No,
not really, just the
waste
standard.
management.
waste
Yeah, waste
management.
management.
Yes, WEE. Okay, thank you for the comment. It is based on EU Sensilenex standard. We are referring to develop waste management. And in IC level, we try to make one standard for vertical and horizontal treatment of waste. So maybe next year we try to start the standardization, I think.
Okay.
Is it okay? This answer is okay? Sorry, US regulation, the standardization you are interested in?
Oh, it's just in general, the question.
General question, yes. And this is our approach. Yes.
Just about the work we have done on the WEE. Yes.
Yes, WEE means US. So we try to make a standard.
Yes.
Right.
So actually, I can maybe add a few words to that, Miyuki-san, if you allow me. In Europe, more than 10 standards have been produced covering different aspects of electronic waste management. It goes from the collection, the logistics, the treatment, the pollution, and some of their standards are more product specific and some are more generic. And what they are doing now is that they are more or less binding these generic standards in one, and they are being offered to IEC, and a new work item proposal is about to be submitted to ICTC 111, where the logistics, the treatment, those aspects will be combined in what they call a global e-waste standard and that will run under TC 111. Yes.
Yes, it's a very important point. Now TC 111 is horizontal function. And maybe I'm not sure how should we treat the product specific standards like mercury lamps or some kind of waste. We need to discuss how to develop these waste standards. But it is very important topic in the future. Thank you, Solange-san.
Thank you very much, Miyuki-san and Solange. In fact, my colleague Chris Aegis, who is the secretary for the IECQ, also mentioned that the IECQ HSPM, Hazardous Substances Conformity Assessment Scheme, also covers WEEE. So this is added information for you.
Yes, it's very useful information. We'd like to collaborate. Thank you.
And we do have a question about IEC 62257-9-5 for lanterns and off-grid system. The question is whether can we give specific comment based on tiers for this product?
Okay.
Or Rajesh, for this?
I think the question is addressed to Leon.
Leon, yeah.
Yeah. So the 9-5 series aligns with tier 2. But it also, that document is a bit explanatory. It's got two legs. It's got the lanterns and it also covers PD kits, which is tier 3. So the intention is that the specification fulfills that need, but it's I did in my presentation, perhaps it was missed because of the full slide not being available. There was a a description of saying which of these specifications is aligned with which tier at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Leon. And now we are almost time for tea break. But before we move to tea break, I'd like to ask Vima and Rajiv, in terms of the work that you have done, what is the greatest challenge in terms of getting countries to participate, especially those who are affiliates, to participate in the system committee on LVDC?
I'm sure Rajiv can give his impressions, but I would love to share my own experiences in this. Since about 2014, I have been involved with this work. Earlier through SEG4, where we did a lot of work on electricity access, and I traveled to Africa several times to hold some conferences and meetings. And then as chair of the systems committee for LVDC, and then also for as IEC ambassador. Now, the biggest challenge in my impression is that somewhere in the mindset of affiliate countries is that IEC is somewhere far away and it's a complex process, and we are still beginning to learn about standardization. So how can we even influence? I think that is an old mindset. I wish, and my very clear message to all affiliate country representatives who are on this call today is, IEC is a beautiful, powerful platform which listens to everybody. This is the platform where whatever be your national level challenges of electricity access, terrain, ambient conditions, usage conditions, temperatures, humidity, whatever it is, you bring here. Even if you do not have the technical expertise to answer a specific issue, bring the questions or the challenges you are facing to IEC. IEC has a pool of experts who can start thinking about it and come up with a consensus solution. If you do not participate, if you don't bring your challenges to IEC, how can IEC, even sitting in Geneva or wherever the meetings are held, how can they even begin to understand what challenges you face? So sometimes I find that in affiliate members or newly industrialized countries, the challenge is, oh, IEC is demanding something different from what we need. Of course, it will be different if you don't talk about it. So number one message, and my number one message to take home for everyone is, talk about it, raise the issues, demand more, get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vima. And Rajiv?
Yeah, he has very nicely and very beautifully explained whatever is the most important crux of the issue. The more we get involved, it's going to be a collaborative effort. See, we can't develop a solution sitting in a closed room. It has to address the global issue, so the entire globe has to get involved. So the more the people get involved into it, we are going to have a solution which is universally more acceptable and more robust. And it's going to be a real game changer, as we said earlier. So I request all the countries who are typically the most beneficiary countries, at least they should come forward and participate in the standardization process. Either we make standards or we follow the standards. So we have to participate in making the standards. This is the opportunity, and all are welcome.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. I'd like to thank all the speakers for joining this panel and for sharing your valuable insights to the participants. Now it's time for tea break, and we'll come back again at 1:45 Geneva time. Yes, 1:45. So now I wish everyone a good short tea break ahead. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you again. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed the music at the final minute before the tea break ended. All right. Okay, good. Thank you for returning to the second half of the workshop. Without further ado, we'll start on the next session, where we'll have two affiliate countries' perspective on the Sustainable Development Goals. We'll start first with the perspective from Namibia, and we have with us again Rajesh Sharma, who will now wear his hat as president of the Namibia Electrotechnical Committee to share with us. Rajesh, please.
Thank you for the floor, Dennis. I'll share my presentation with you. Is it clear, Dennis?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear, and the presentation is fine. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Once again, I'm with you. I'm going to share Namibia perspectives on SDGs. And for those who do not know where Namibia is, I advise you to go to Google and find where it is. I'm only realizing now that some of you might not know where Namibia is. This is what I'm going to share with you. Electricity is no longer a luxury, but a vehicle for development. Insufficient electricity hampers economic activity. However, electricity is still a luxury in Africa. Not only in Africa, I think for most developing countries. Modern energy services are crucial to human being, to well-being, and to a country's economic development. Access to modern energy is essential for development, for the provision of clean water, sanitation, and healthcare, for the provision of reliable and efficient lighting, heating, cooking, mechanical power, transport, and telecommunication services. Energy access is crucial for SDGs attainment. So moving on, I always say when the Millennium Development Goals were developed, that they aimed to reduce extreme poverty by 2015, amongst others, did not have a specific energy goal. However, as I said, it is a fact that energy in general and electricity in particular impacted on each of the MDGs. With the development of the SDGs, energy was included as a goal that's confirming its importance. SDG 7 in particular is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. I think in the previous presentations that were made by Rajiv and others, they emphasized on this as well. So coming back up to Namibia, lack of access to energy remains a critical barrier to poverty alleviation and industrialization efforts. Challenges to delivering energy in Namibia include the vastness of the country. I think for those who have visited Namibia, they've witnessed to this. Small size of the country power sector and the low load densities and long distances between major load centers. Moreover, the economic spending power of the majority of the rural population reduces the business case for private investment in this area. Key interventions supporting SDG 7 are improve local generation capacity to 755 megawatts. By 2022, we are currently at about 650 megawatts in terms of our demand. Above will help to avoid over-reliance on imports. We import sometimes more than 50% of our energy requirements. Harness indigenous resources for generation energy. Improve percentage of national electrification rate from 34%, that was in 2010, to 50% by 2022. Let me go on a global scale now. 1.3 million people lack access to electricity. More than 600 million are in sub-Saharan Africa. Africa is the largest connected continent least connected continent in the world. 2 in every 3 Africans do not have access to electricity. Majority rely on expensive and dangerous kerosene. Need to accelerate access rate in Africa. And Namibia is not an exception. So electricity is needed for accelerated SDGs attainment. So for the access in Namibia, one might ask, what are the statistics? As you can see there, for urban, it's about 75%. These are 2017 statistics. For rural, about 24%. So you can see for every 100 people, only 24 have got access to electricity. And the total, these are World Bank figures, 53%, which is very low. And for Namibia as well, we have actually standardized on tier 3 of the multi-tier framework for our access. And tier 3, we have said this is what Namibia, if you are below tier 3, tier 2, we are saying, you are not yet having access to electricity, but tier 3 and above, we are considering that as having access to electricity, and your consumption is about 365 per year, which means divide by 365 days, you have about 1 kilowatt hour per day in terms of consumption. Now, looking at the social impact, we need a two-pronged approach. The top-down direction, which is grid expansion, and the bottom-up direction, which is the off-grid acceleration. Above results in convergence without neglecting the rural areas far from the grid. Maybe let me check, Dennis, with you. Is the presentation clear? Can you see the whole screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because I might continue when only half the screen is being seen. So above will solve socio-economic issues. The past trend was population migration from rural to urban centers. And the present trend is slowed down in rural migration. So for the future, rural areas will be more attractive than urban areas because everything that you find in the urban centers will also be in the rural areas, and we are talking in terms of electricity. And thanks to VIMA with LVDC, storage and appropriate standards. My presentation would not be complete if I don't talk of disruptive technologies, and LVDC is one of them. I always like when VIMA is making his presentation on LVDC, then I say, yes, that is a disruptive technology. Many lessons from the near extinction of the telephone. We are all aware of the landline. So this is the same thing. Cell phone is equivalent to LVDC and storage. Both are disruptive technologies. Cell phone displacing landline and LVDC displacing the grid. As you saw from my statistics for Namibia, only 24% have access to electricity in the rural areas. So LVDC definitely will be the savior. The future days of the utility as we know it now are numbered. The past trend was extensive grid extension to remote rural areas, which was not economic at all, and little LVDC attention. The present trend is grid to rural is slow, and rural LVDC is growing fast. So in future, we are looking at convergence of grid and rural LVDC. Prosumers are gaining prominence. Net metering now is the norm in other areas. With storage, most people are defecting from the grid. This is disruptive technology. So standards promotion in Namibia at a global level, we have IEC. Namibia is part of the affiliate country program. It participates in that. And Africa Regional Center assistance is always given to us. On a regional level, we are a member of AFSEC, and we participate in that as well. On a national level, we have a national electrotechnical committee was established, MIRA committees were formed, regulations being developed by the regulators in the various areas of electrotechnology, and operationalization efforts of the standards are in progress. By operationalization, I mean, once you have adopted the standards, it's not enough. You should go ahead now to include them in your regulations so that they become applicable and enforced. So in terms of policies related to the standard, the national energy policy has been developed, renewable energy policy, and we have also a national integrated plan, a national integrated resource plan. Electrification policy is being developed mainly for grid extension. Off-grid policy has been developed. All above are in support of sustainable development goals. And from a regulatory perspective regarding the electricity industry, the Electricity Act is there. Electricity regulator was established in 2000, overseeing all electricity supply chain activities. Standards implementation part of the mandate, and regulations thereof are being developed. And in conclusion, I would like to say Namibia needs to achieve SDGs by 2030. Goal 7 impacts on all the other goals, since access to energy and electricity in particular is imperative. Currently, Namibia is very low electricity access rate. I gave the statistics in my slides before. Namibia needs to exploit its abundant resources and accelerate access to electricity. Standards are crucial for accelerated access to electricity and SDGs attainment. All stakeholders in Namibia have a role to play in standards development, regulations development, and compliance issues. I thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for highlighting Namibia's efforts towards universal access to electricity. And our next presentation will move from Namibia to Mongolia.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
So, sorry?
I was just thanking you very much for giving me this opportunity.
We thank you, Rajesh. Yes. And next, we'd like to invite Passenger to share with us from the Mongolia's perspective on the SDGs. Passenger, please. And just before I'd like to also introduce Passenger that she's also the incoming fleet leader for the year 2021 to 2023. Passenger, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Dear IEC family members around the world, today I'm going to introduce unique case of applying IEC standards and how it supports SDG in Mongolia. Before I proceed with my presentation, I would like to provide a brief introduction of Mongolia. Mongolia has land mass of 1,500 square kilometers and population 3.5 million. Around 50% of population live in capital Ulaanbaatar. The country has huge resource of wind and solar energy, but currently 90% of electricity comes from thermal power. Mongolia has substantial high-quality coking coal reserves, and it's one of the world's largest coal exporters. The main user of IEC standards is energy sector. The legal environment around the energy sector consists of the state policy of energy, green development policy, energy law, renewable energy law, energy efficiency law, and concept of sustainable development of Mongolia. The state policy on energy, Mongolia identifies following three priorities: reliable energy, supply and security, efficiency and productivity, environmental sustainability, and green development. Current statistics indicates that 20% of installed energy capacity will be provided by renewables in 2023. As of the October 2020, 90% of total electricity was produced by thermal power plants. 8.1% of electricity was produced by solar and wind, and only 1.2% electricity was produced by hydropower resources. This presentation shows Mongolia's targets when it comes to the use of renewables energy and on the range of standards that it has developed to ensure support these objectives. Mongolia joined IEC affiliate country program in 2001. In 2015, we have established NEC and became affiliate plus. NEC cooperates with IEC affiliate country program and advises national technical committees, which is adopting IEC standard, which standards should be adopted. Currently, around 150 standards have been translated and adopted according to ISO IEC Guide 21, and they are marked as standards MNS IEC standards. Due to the translation requirements, total number of adopted standards seems to be low. Based on national priority, national experts are observing and observing the entire process through 4 technical committees. A quarter of Mongolian population is nomadic herders. In 2000, nomads had limited or no access to modern electricity services. Mongolian government began the national 100,000 solar gear electrification program. The program provided photovoltaic solar home systems that were portable in design, making the systems adaptable to the nomadic lifestyle and complemented the traditional way of life. These days, thanks to modern photovoltaic solar panels and battery, 170,000 nomads use satellite TV, light, refrigerator, and basic home appliances, mobile phones, even internet access regardless of their remote location. This opportunity provides nomads with the access to latest news and education, especially for young generations. IEC standards support us every way. Today, we live within the global risks such as extreme weather conditions, climate action failure, natural disasters, and human-made natural disasters and global pandemics. Currently, MNS 31010 risk management standard help us to manage risks in uncertain situations. Also, IEC standards in 60050 series on terminology standards translated into Mongolian and establishing our common language of understanding in electrotechnology field. Recently, this is Mongolian terms included in electropedia.org. Number of IEC standards with us at home and support our health. Particularly, IEC standard 60335 standards on household and similar electrical appliances. Also, IEC standards on 60601 series standards on medical equipment are used as a reference to contracted parties. In additional, IEC standards are going to be adopted as national standards soon. Renewable energy resource is evenly distributed throughout the country. Solar, wind, and hydropower. Mongolia has a potential to generate 8 terawatts of wind energy. IEC standards on wind energy generation systems are adopted as national standards and used as basis of construction and commissioning of the contracted parties. They support SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. Mongolia has a potential to generate 5.7 megawatts of hydropower. To support the renewable energy regulation, IEC standards on hydropower plant are under the translation are going to be adopted. Also, IEC standards on photovoltaic Mongolia has a potential to generate 5 terawatts of solar energy. IEC standards on photovoltaic modules, requirements, testing, commissioning, inspection are adopted and used as fundamental documents. Regarding to infrastructure, IEC standards on standard voltage and the standard frequency with all the different standards, starting from electric and network cable to switch gear and control gear, play essential role in the infrastructure of Mongolia. Also, IEC standards on energy saving and energy efficiency are used as a reference for state policy on energy saving. To promote green energy, Mongolia as a member of ISO, we adopted ISO IEC standards, 40,060 series standards. In conclusion, as the regulators, consumers and industry benefit from the use of IEC international standards. However, we still have challenges due to limited resource, experience, and language barriers. Therefore, we look forward to affiliate country program to benefit more SDGs in Mongolia. Thank you for your undivided attention. Thank you. If you have questions, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Passenger, for sharing Mongolia's target on the use of renewable energy and also on identifying the IEC standards that can be used to support your SDG goals. We'll now move on to our final presentation for today. And I'm pleased to welcome Ralph Sporer, who is the chair of the IEC Standardization Management Board, to share with us on the strategic vision of IEC on SDGs. Ralph, please.
Thank you, Dennis. Can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes, I can hear you clearly and the screen is fine.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants. My name is Ralph Sporer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the current chair of the Standardization Management Board, which is one of the 3 main boards overlooking the technical work in IEC. And it's my privilege to be part of this important event, which is dedicated towards discussing and seeing how IEC can support the SDGs. but maybe also the other way around, what value lies in the SDGs for IEC. It's always a challenge to go last with the presentation, having seen all the beautiful, nice and exciting examples of which kind of standards can be used to actually achieve certain goals under the SDG program. It's also good to hear from countries how they make use of standards and the SDGs to promote their further development. This last presentation will focus a little bit on a different view. We've heard a lot about this kind of bottom-up activities coming from technical committees and national committees and countries and how they connect to the SDGs. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the management level within IEC and will give you some information about what's going on the management level. And we have already heard that there are lots of activities from technical committees and from standardization activities which contribute to reaching the SDGs. And the SDGs are certainly very important goals. And I think all of us agree in that it's worth pursuing that and being part of that journey towards fulfilling those very valid sustainable development goals. But the question for me remains is, how can we support that from the IEC viewpoint when it comes to a strategic view on it? So is there a need to adjust our current IEC strategy in order to better contribute to the SDGs? Do we need to change anything within the way we work? So in order to better, actually even better support those activities? And I would also like to turn the question a little bit around and ask the question, what value does the SDG bring to an organization like IEC? So I'm going to spend the next minutes to a little bit reflect about those questions and give you my initial ideas about how I see that. So let me start by recalling the master plan, which is representing the current IEC strategy. And as you all know, certainly, we've given ourselves a vision, which is IEC everywhere for a safer, more efficient world. And we have given some more details in the mission statement that we produce the IEC international standards and conformity assessment services around this notion. We also came up with some values, which are kind of the pillar of what kind of organization the IEC wants to be, and the community, and what should be embraced by the community. And we also talked about some actually 4 strategic objectives in order to implement that. And you all know that many in the IEC and nearly all of the community has been working hard in the last years to make this master plan come true and to implement it. And I'm only stating that because we are obviously not on a blank piece of paper here, but we are operating on the base of the master plan, which was discussed and approved by all the IEC members as the way to go forward. The question now is, where do the SDGs actually fit in that picture? And I'll come back a little bit later in my presentation on what kind of connections I see between this vision and the SDGs, and to really see how IEC fits into SDGs and SDGs fit into the IEC strategy. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We've talked about it. These are the 17 important sustainable development goals announced by the UN. And we already heard a lot about the scope of these SDGs. We heard about the importance the discussion gets on the international level and how many countries and governments are actually buying into that and agree that this is what we should strive for, this is what we should achieve. And additionally, of course, we've heard how much IEC is already contributing to that. I want to spend a little time on what is common between the IEC and the SDGs and where we can kind of benefit from each other. And certainly the most common element of IEC and SDG is that they share a truly global vision. Both are focused on the international level, and therefore naturally they kind of complement each other. While the SDGs provide us with a natural compass to achieve globally relevant goals, IEC provides means to achieve harmonization on a global scale. So this is kind of a win-win situation that we have here. And I think IEC can do a lot for the SDGs. And I'm going to reflect a little bit more on what the SDG does to IEC. Let me start with the IEC. What can we bring to the table? And again, I emphasize, I'm looking on that a little bit more from a high-level perspective rather than focusing on individual specific goals. And you know, IEC can offer a range of services to the international community that are also relevant for the SDGs. And for reaching the SDGs, we will have to use existing and new technology. And many of those technologies are within the scope of IEC, and we can provide the standards and the benefits of standards towards these technologies. The first one is certainly that you all know that standards are able to build trust because they ensure the safety, the quality. They also give you measurement methods to compare and to assess the effect of certain technologies on your daily life. So in essence, they build trust, and with that, they help us to for a faster uptake of innovations in the marketplace. Also, international standards enable economies of scale, and because we harmonize markets, we can provide products to bigger markets and drive down the cost for widespread adoption of new technologies and solutions. And finally, there are already a lot of examples where standards enable and support complex systems, which again are necessary in order to reach the goals behind the SDGs. Now let me come to the reverse question, so to speak. What can the SDGs kind of contribute to the standardization community in IEC? And you know that our core business is to develop international standards and conformity assessment services. And in doing so, we are dependent on the voluntary contribution of experts, which are in turn delegated by their respective organizations. So it's a fair question to ask, is there something that we can benefit from the SDGs? And I think there's a very important point where we benefit from the SDGs. It is that the SDGs enable us to connect to an international activity which will set the requirements for pilots, solutions, and applications around the world. And this has the immense advantage for us that we actually understand very well what kind of technologies are needed out there, what kind of technologies will prevail in the market. And from that, we can much better develop the necessary standards and conformity assessment services that are relevant for those new and existing technologies. And the buy-in and support by governments only adds to that advantage because this is a worldwide activity. Furthermore, we can learn from the best practices which evolve from the implementation of the SDGs. Again, standards can be derived from those best practices. We can learn about the technologies that are used in those cases, and we can learn from the experience that is, which is collected under the umbrella of the SDGs. And of course, standards can also document best practices and again help the spreading of those best practices on the basis of being an international standard. So in summary, SDGs are a means for us to better understand where the market and the technologies go, and therefore allow us to develop the relevant standards and conformity assessment services around it. So let me now come back to the master plan and where I see a connection to the SDGs. First of all, the vision. I see everywhere for a safer, more efficient world. It's obvious that we share with the SDG the goal to make this world a better place, and as it is stated in our vision and mission statement. So the SDGs share the same goals here. Secondly, the SDGs are relevant for the whole world. Any activity aimed at the SDGs is therefore relevant for a lot of regions and countries, sometimes even all of the regions and all of the countries. And this certainly supports the IEC vision and mission, which asks for IEC everywhere and worldwide use of our IEC international standards and conformity assessment services. And last but not least, an additional element which has been mentioned earlier also by some of the speakers in the first part of our workshop. It's the role of IEC in enabling electricity access, which is a precondition for all of the SDGs. So there's a good match here. And let's move on to the strategic objectives. And again, I also see here some connections where the IEC strategy, as we have developed it and as we are living it, actually is very much in line with the goals of the SDGs. And first of all, I'd like to mention that certainly by connecting to the SDGs and their implementation, that will help us to keep and even enhance our market and societal relevance, because we are able to respond effectively to market and society needs, which are expressed by the global community in terms of SDGs. And secondly, IEC's involvement in the SDGs can broaden our stakeholder base. This has been discussed earlier during the presentation, that it brings more people on board. Sometimes it brings people on board which have not been in touch with the IEC and with IEC standards and the benefits that they can derive from those. So, and that all together will kind of add up in really sustaining our business model, because we are providing standards and conformity assessment services which are serving the needs expressed by the SDGs. Now, let me move on to the activities, and I really be fast on this one because this has been explained beautifully before. As said, international IEC international standards and conformity assessment services actually contribute to all of the 17 sustainable development goals. And you can see that in the briefing paper, where you have all those examples, the PCs, and their relevance to specific goals. There's a lot of material there, and a lot of it has already been presented by some of the other speakers here. So let me move on to the board level and a little bit explain what has been going on. This is a slide you've already seen with Vimal's slide set. I apologize for that. And he already explained that at the beginning of 2019, we have actually installed an ad hoc group where we looked into and started our investigation how the connection between SDGs and IEC could be further developed. And especially, we looked at how to include conformity assessment, but specifically, because that's the standards part, also how can we connect the work of the technical committees with the SDGs and further develop that. And Vimal Mahindra, our good friend Vimal Mahindra, served as the convener of that group, and they developed a number of recommendations, which are on the next slide here, which are shown on the next slide. And they have recommended a number of things. For example, they recommended to actually develop a communication material and also to kind of streamline the messaging of IEC towards our internal and external stakeholders. They also provided a number of methods, and Vimal showed already one in the NVIP format a template, how we can kind of promote the connection or the integration of the SDGs into the work of the technical committees. But most importantly, their finding was that this is an endeavor, this is a task that is going beyond the standardization part of IEC. It touches basically all of IEC and all of the boards. And that's why the results were given to the Council Board as the supreme decision body within, except of course the Council, but the Council Board prepares recommends the decision towards Council. For Council Board to take it on board with the task to make this an IEC-wide activity. And last week at the Council Board meeting during this year's general meeting, Council Board took action and they actually approved the setup of a Council Board task force on the SDGs. And you can see the scope here on the screen. And again, it focuses a little bit on evaluating the needs and understand the results of the SDGs in order to enable us to better contribute to the SDG goals. But it also, and that's the first line that you see here on the screen, it's also tasked to provide a strategic framework how to better include the SDGs in an IEC strategy. And here kind of we close the loop, because this is, as you may remember, that's the title of my presentation, talking about the IEC strategy towards SDG. And with that slide, what you see is that's still in the making. We are doing a lot of things already for the SDGs. The SDGs provide a lot of things to us, but the strategy towards SDGs will be further developed in all of the boards, in all of IEC, and certainly within this group. So to conclude, I hope I have shown to you that IEC and the SDGs complement each other, that they are kind of natural partners on the international level which benefit from each other. And I think the main reason for that is certainly that both IEC and the SDGs share the desire and the goal to make this a better world for all of us. Thank you very much, and back to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Ralph, for your presentation. It really has given us a very interesting management perspective on IEC contribution to the SDG, and conversely, SDG contribution to the IEC. All right, now we'll move to the next session, which is on Q&A, and where Vimal will be moderating this session. We'd like to invite all other speakers, Rojas and Messenger, to also join in at this Q&A session. Over to you, Vimal. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, I must congratulate and compliment all the three panelists who are here. Excellent presentations. I learned a lot, and I think to connect with Namibia, to connect with Mongolia, and Ralph, to hear your overall vision for SDGs. In a way, I think that in itself is energizing, and it motivates me to say that IEC is well on its way to helping the global community implement their own SDG goals. So thank you very much, panelists. I think for me personally, I think it's also a unique honor to have such a high-level panel and to try and ask questions. Thankfully, I already see a lot of questions coming in, and my request to all the attendees is, if you may put your questions in the Q&A box, not in the comments box or the chat box, but in the Q&A box, and short questions, precise questions will help me direct them more accurately to Rojas or Batsengel or to Ralph. So with that, before I get into the normal Q&A and while the questions are coming in, Rojas, to you painted a picture of Namibia where you are working hard from the government, from the regulators' perspective, also in implementing the SDGs and especially SDG 7. More for me and also for many of our attendees on the call, could you just paint a picture of a village or a community which did not have any electricity, what life was, what the work was, what was the vocation, how were people earning a living, and then thanks to the interventions of the government, there was some electrification and how it kind of changed life in that village. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Vimal, for your question. I always like to give a picture of a woman. Before, you see, women are the ones who suffer most if there is not energy is not improved upon. They are the ones who go to the forest to look for firewood and go to the well to fetch some water. So I always give this picture of a woman, and this woman has got a kid in front, carrying a kid in front, and another one at the back, and then on the head is carrying what? Is carrying firewood. You can imagine that picture of that woman, the way, and sometimes she can have another kid on the side and another kid on the side because the family is too big for her, and she's carrying all that heavy luggage in terms of what? In terms of, but with the coming of electricity now, there are water pump, electricity, DC pumps that you can have a well at your place, and then you have what? The woman doesn't have to travel very far away to fetch some water. And in terms of what? And in terms of light, now she has got what? She has got electricity, and she can see in the at night, and kids can also do what? Kids can also read, and that will further in terms of what? In terms of education. So you can imagine now, before electricity came, it was quite tough in terms of the rural, especially the rural woman. For men, you would be carrying an egg following that woman carrying that heavy luggage, and which is quite. But for women, they were the ones who had hit hard most. So in terms of now the electrification that has come through the multi-tier framework, where we have said the minimum we want is tier 3, I think it's definitely improving life in the rural areas. And in terms of the equipment, I think manufacturers also are coming on board in terms of what? In terms of coming up with the DC appliances that can be used in the rural areas.
Wonderful. How's the life for men? Earlier they were involved with agriculture, and has the life for men, has the shops changed? How has the village life for men changed? The women, I see that it has changed in a big way.
Yes, definitely. In terms of men, they used to do, if it was a man who used to do some carving for his equipment, now with light, instead of just doing it during the day, now the day is extended for him. He can continue into the night using the light that he's getting from the what? From the DC lights. So for men also, it has improved quite a lot in terms of the what? In terms of the activities and productivity, for that matter. That is what matters most. So for men, it has quite improved as well. There is productivity, because instead of doing things just during the day, they can also do their work, productive work, into the night, into the evening rather. Yeah.
Batsengel, how has been your experience in Mongolia with the transformation? You showed some very powerful pictures of nomad tents with solar PV panels with internet access. How have things changed in terms of productive use, in terms of earning a living for these people, for the people who are the nomads?
Actually, this transformation took around 5-6 years. Mongolia government implemented projects with the World Bank. They issued a loan for herders, low interest loan. That's why Mongolian rural area now more supplied by photovoltaic elements. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Ralph, you made a very powerful presentation and a pitch how IEC standards and standardization is kind of going hand in hand in helping governments address their SDGs, and I totally buy into this vision. One of the challenges that when I look at it from the affiliate or the industrializing countries perspective is still the ongoing challenge of poor quality. And there was a question also earlier today about what is IEC doing to address poor quality of equipment? Is there anything that can be done at IEC? What more can we as a community do to address that people who have little money are not spending it on inferior products, but still addressing good quality products?
Well, I think certainly this is a question that is tackled sometimes in standardization, but much more even on the conformity assessment side. I mean, using conformity assessment towards standards and the requirements stated in the standards, I think is a way to ensure that you drive up quality if you are applying to those standards. So I think there are some activities, and certainly the whole CA program and the services actually go towards that direction. Obviously, we need the standards to be the base for such a conformity assessment, and in some areas they are lacking. But on the other hand, we've heard a lot of news today and good news about the development of standards in those very disruptive or game-changing areas, like whether it's the electricity access, whether it's the quality of those installations, and so on and so forth. And maybe one thing that I also wanted to point out, I mean, traditionally, IEC standards are requirement standards. They are not so much explaining to the user how to use them, actually, not only to use the standard, but also to use the technology. This is traditionally not the core of an IEC standard. I think we've made some efforts to make clear that it is important to write the standards, but it is even more important to explain how to use the standard and the conformity assessment towards a certain technology. And that's certainly even more important for countries who are developing rather than countries like Germany, who've been doing that for decades. So I think, and you know very well, because you are the chair of one of those system committees, that we've tried to introduce new kind of deliverables, which would explain to the user how to use the standard and how to use the technology to achieve something. And I think this is also what has been shown by Rajiv, which has been shown by Leon, that more and more the TCs go in that direction, not only to say that's a nice international standard, it tells you what you have to meet, but it doesn't tell you how to use it. And that's certainly something we need to further explore and develop.
Excellent. I think that's a very powerful message that by and large, we have already done enough with product standards. And of course, that is evolving and more product standards are coming up. But system level standards are also coming up. And system, let me not call them standards, but you know, the SRDs, the new publications that are coming, they explain more about how different standards can be put together to deliver a certain use case. And that's a lot of the work that is being done by system committees. Back to you, Rajesh. What is that one thing which has been done in Namibia that has really helped you achieve or begin to achieve your SDG targets? Anything from the government, the policymakers, regulators, industry, that one big thing which could be an interesting learning for the rest of us who are on this workshop. What has helped Namibia?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vimal. As I said, with SDG 7, then we said, what should we do with that? Then we said, if we can standardize on multi-tier framework 3 in terms of the SMAP, World Bank SMAP level 3, and then what we went on is accelerated distribution of kits in rural areas so that we can improve the lives of those in the rural areas. So that is tremendously actually increased our access rate in terms of the rural areas that were neglected. Because before, when investors came, all they were thinking was, we want electricity opportunities, investment. They would think of the grid. But we were now saying, no, don't think of the grid only. There are people in the rural areas who also want electricity. And in terms of that, why don't we promote now mini grids, off grids, and also standalone kits for the rural areas? So I think as Namibia, we are driving hard towards that so as to achieve. Effectively, when you achieve goal number 7, the other ones also fall into place. And we are pushing in all directions regarding that. That's what I can say. Actually, Namibia is excelling on.
Excellent. So I think that clarity and that focus on tier 3 of electricity multi-tier framework, I think that clarity has brought. In Mongolia, Batsengal, what is that one thing that you have done in terms of standardization or in terms of the policy regulatory framework which has helped Mongolia or continues to help Mongolia in addressing SDGs? You're muted.
Recently, we have developed, NIC Mongolia developed a strategy document with the stakeholders, which will support Mongolian development, economy, and social development. This strategy NIC strategy document is named NIC Strategy 2030. It covers about the priority areas such as the electric reliability and IT security. And next, we started cooperating with the universities to raise awareness of students, next generation engineers.
Excellent. So education and the focus on upgrading the skills and knowledge has been helpful. Okay. Ralph, I see a very interesting question from Jose Canales, coming, and it's addressed to you. Do you recall an example of people who have helped through innovations, the improvement of IEC standards?
I have been looking at that question before, and I apologize to Jose if I may misunderstand the purpose of that question. Maybe I'm answering to two interpretations of the question, and then Jose can come back and see whether he finds his question is answered. Well, obviously, if it comes to innovations, all of the standards, all of the review standards, the new standards usually react to innovations. Innovation is a process to put new technologies on the market, and standards are necessary to support that process. So I think all of the standards are obviously relevant or to innovations and react to innovations. But there's a second interpretation to it. The second interpretation is that innovations are used to improve the standard itself. And this brings me to my favorite subject, which also was mentioned on the chat. And you know me, Vimal, I cannot say two straight sentences without mentioning digitalization. And digitalization is actually what we are doing here. We are using databases, we are using XML to actually improve not only the content of the standards, but also to make it easier that the standards can be understood, not only by machines, which is a far dream, but most by people. Yeah. So I think this process that has started here, all this stuff around machine readable standards, it will also add value for the normal user to get better benefits from standards and to better understand how you can use a standard actually in your context. So I apologize if I haven't answered the right question. I can go on, answer a third interpretation, but I'd leave it with that.
But that's a very interesting point you made on digital transformation, Ralph. And I know that you've been spearheading this with a lot of clarity and vision and taking IEC onto this journey of digital transformation internally as well as in terms of the standardization. So an add-on question to you, Ralph, is how do you make digital transformation itself more inclusive of this community which is on this call? For example, affiliates, affiliate plus, industrializing countries. Sometimes we struggle to even get electricity. So how do we connect with this?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. We are done for the rest of the session now, because it's my favorite subject, as said. Well, of course, you need electricity access for that. And I've learned from many people, and I have not the privilege, I don't have as many contacts as you, Vimal, or Royas, or Bart Sengel on that. Well, they want electricity. The first thing they want a light, and then the next thing they want is this. And
yes,
and I was amazed when I saw the numbers, for example, in Africa, which actually has simply skipped having a fixed installed telephone, but they have a share of mobile devices which is even higher than in Europe. So what they did is they kind of leapfrogged an innovation cycle, and now people have access to these things. So if we put digitalization on these things, it will be much easier for people around the world to use them, to access them, and to participate in the processes behind writing the standards. And as you know, we are now piloting things like online authoring, where you can sit anywhere in the world and dial into the discussions around drafting a standard. So I think that will be a game changer, and it will do a lot to also reach the sustainable development goals. Of course, always under the precondition that you have access to electricity. But the next thing you have access to digitalization, you have access to mobile devices. And I think that's a real game changer, especially for those people who lack the infrastructure, the kind of legacy infrastructure when it comes to transport, to telephone, to whatever. This is really important for us to develop us around the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, I think one of the points that came up earlier in the committee where we were discussing digital transformation was that this actually is going to be a game changer also, because it will lead to inclusive development of standards, that everyone who wants to contribute it will be much easier to contribute. And I think that's where digital transformation is a big enabler and not a hindrance going forward. Thank you very much, Ralph. That was a very precise input on this. I have another question coming in, which was from Trond Sully. Where did that question go? I see that it may have been answered. Just give me a moment. It was right here.
Well, if you wish, I can comment on it, Vimal. I mean, it's around how to decouple a growing energy economic growth from a growing energy consumption. I think Solange has very beautifully described the challenge that we have. On the one hand, to reach sustainable development goals towards poverty, participation, economy, and stuff, but on the other hand, to be sustainable. And I think Solange and Yuki-san, they are at the forefront to tackle those questions. And that's going to be also, again, a very vital question for the whole world. And I very much like the consumption. I don't know, I think Royas put it up, the consumption of electricity around the world, and you saw Canada and the US, and then this declining going down to India and Namibia. I think, interestingly enough, there are some very, very developed countries like Finland, Norway, which do not consume an awful lot of electricity, yet they are developed at the highest economic level that you can think of. And I think looking at these examples is important when it comes to energy efficiency, use of renewables and stuff like that. And again, that's part of the SDGs and part of the discussion we have here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ralph. There are a couple of questions coming in regarding the availability of presentations. So as mentioned by Aristia earlier, of course, all of these presentations will be uploaded to the IEC affiliate forum, and a link will be sent to all those who have registered and also to all the affiliate country members here. Let me take up one more question. This comes from Olivier, who says, my question is about development of the requirements based on tiers and be specific so that each tier is corresponding. So this connects to 622.579-5 is a general requirement. I guess this is an old question which was answered in the earlier session. Let me go to some of the recent questions. There is a question which has something which may not have been answered. There's another question from Tronsoli, and let me see who to direct it to. How to tackle the presumption that access to electricity and increased standard of living will also lead to increased pressure on environment. Does it mean that if people's living standard improves, they will use more electricity and this means more pollution? Rajesh, any thoughts on this?
I think basically what it means there is that with electricity, a lot of gadgets will also come in, and with those gadgets, maybe the disposal part of it, how people are going to dispose and so forth. But maybe the solution will be recyclable material. That's what might be used now for those gadgets. Even if they are whatever, then they will be recyclable. But I am not very much conversant with environmental issues, but those are some of my thoughts regarding that. Definitely with the increase in usage, there will be also increase in those gadgets being disposed, and that might actually harm the environment. And but if there is education and so forth in terms of the environment, I think there might be control in terms of the disposal part of it.
Ralph or Batsingal?
Yes.
Your thoughts on this question? Giving more electricity, improving the standard, and does it lead to commensurate increase in pollution?
I think it goes back to what we've discussed a little bit earlier. I was actually responding kind of that question from Tronsoli, that I said, well, I think Solange showed the challenge that we have to decouple the usage of our environment from the usage of energy and from raising the level of our lifestyle. And this, as I said, I think there are some examples that you could see in the graph which is not a direct matching of electricity usage or environmental usage with the level of the economic lifestyle that the people enjoy in those countries. And again, I think it goes back to the topics that Solange came forward with: material efficiency, energy efficiency, and certainly the use of renewables. And these are the three main pillars. And I think in Europe, we are describing that under what we call a Green New Deal. And I think it's very appropriate for our area. And it's certainly it will come forward with some solutions that might be also applicable somewhere else, but certainly there needs to be adaptations. But looking at the goals that I saw from Mongolia and also other areas, there's, I think, a worldwide desire to use more renewables. And certainly also the energy efficiency and the material efficiency will go up gradually, step by step. Whether we are fast enough, that's the main question. I don't know. And it's certainly a dilemma that we are facing here when we are trying to reach one SDG while we are jeopardizing another.
I can give a personal perspective from India. In India, one of the dark statistics about India is maybe 8 of the top 10 most polluted cities in the world are in India. And the challenge is that in India, we've seen huge amount of development in the cities and urban centers in the last 3 decades or so. From about the 90s, we started this development process. And this rapid development was still based on conventional technologies. Today, there is a big dialogue going on within the country that are we really being smart about it? Getting electricity to people, helping people improve their standard of living, earning, well-being, health is non-negotiable. This is something that the government is pledged because of the SDGs, and like India in every country. So we are promised in a way to our people that we are going to bring all this development to you. I think we have to be smart about using the right technologies which will enable this for the future. Somewhere in India, our experience is that we've kind of lost our way in this rapid development, industrialization, commercialization of our country. I think today there is this debate going on, and maybe this COVID-19 pandemic is a quick reminder that we really need to be conscious of how we develop things in our country. I think that's the kind of issue going on. Ralph?
But again, this was the perfect example.
Exactly.
I think why should you put all the copper in the ground and the fiber optics like we did in Germany if you don't need to? So exactly. I think there are means and there will be innovations that make it possible to leapfrog certain developments. And I think we need to make clever use of that. And maybe it's not the way like Rojas described it. We're not looking into extending the grid. We are looking for more intelligent solutions. And we need the standards and the technology with that.
Exactly. I think we have also learned in the last 30 years what are the errors and mistakes we've done in the past, and how do we learn from it to make a better world for the future. I see that we have about 3 minutes left, so I have one pointed question to each one of you, and the same question. Rojas, to you, and then Batsengal, and then Ralph, the last word. The question is, one expectation that you would have from IEC, community of experts or the boards or everybody, what can we do to enable Namibia or the affiliate countries to address their SDGs better? One thing that you think we can do, and that's the message we'll take out from here.
LVDC is the solution. I think that's the message.
Thank you. LVDC, get DC standards going. Rajiv, I hope you're listening. You better move fast. Yes. There is demand. Batsengal.
In my opinion, we should integrate environmental issues in both of standardization and conformity assessment. We should establish environmental indicators of the standardization and conformity assessment activities.
Very clear message. Establish environmental indicators within standards and conformity assessment
for every standards and conformity assessment activities.
Excellent. Good point. Ralph, to you.
Okay, I'll make my life very easy and simply echo what you said earlier, Vimal. Get engaged, come to the table. We can only develop the right standards if we know your conditions, how you want to use them, how you need to understand them. And we are working on providing the facilities for that, whether it's the system committees or whether it's part of the digitalization, which might be a way forward to get your voices easily heard in future. Thank you.
Excellent. I think that's a perfect message. Thank you very much for the session, panelists. I think you were all amazing. You managed all the questions, and for me personally, it's a unique privilege to be addressing this issue of SDGs, because I come from India, where we have huge challenges. We have a big, complex country, and we are struggling at times to even keep our nose above the water, so to say. And we feel that looking at standardization, especially when it comes to IEC, conformity assessment schemes, the right kind of policy framework which comes from the government, where the government is working, getting the right regulatory framework, because without the correct regulations, we may not be able to make much progress. So putting all this together gives us an opportunity to address our country's holistic development to deliver on all the SDGs. For me personally, SDG 7 remains close to my heart. Those who are wondering, this jacket I'm wearing, this is SDG 7. It's the same color. So that's the reason why I wore it. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Dennis, over to you.
Thanks very much, Vimal, for leading a very interesting discussion together with Passenger, Rogers, and Raf. Before we come to the end of this event, I'd like to thank once again all the speakers for taking time to share with us on this important work of SDGs. And in addition to the speakers, I'd also like to thank the people who work behind the scenes to help make this possible. And most important of all, I'd like to thank all participants for joining us in this session. We hope you will find it very useful. And once again, I'd like to reiterate that everything we have here, the presentations and the recording, will all be available online very soon. All right. Thank you, everyone. And wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.